I have a lot of books on my bookshelves. I will probably not live long enough to read them all, but I will show you just a few of my unread books. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I will be doing a tag, 10 Untouched Books Tag, created by Rainer at Rainier Books. He is a German living in Sweden and reading books in English, at least some of the time. He has a really fascinating outlook and reads some interesting books. Please check out his channel. And his tag only has one prompt. Present 10 books from your shelves that have been there at least a year or more and present them. This is about creating awareness to read from our own shelves, enhance sustainability, and maybe saving some bucks. If you know my channel, you know I have a problem buying way too many books that I could ever possibly read in one lifetime. It is usually limited to digital books for my Kindle, but I also buy a lot of physical books, or I used to buy a lot of physical books, as you can well see looking behind me. And some of those books I never read. So today I'm going to present 10 books that I purchased from Amazon. And I'm picking books that I purchased on Amazon because it's a very definite, deliberate act to hit that buy button on the internet. So something made me buy these books. And why? I'm not so sure. I will be discussing each book and pondering why I bought this book. Sometimes I don't remember. So let's see what books I did purchase. In 2018, I purchased Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangarembga. I am absolutely mispronouncing her last name. I'm not entirely sure why I purchased this book. I probably read a book review in the New York Times Book Review because she probably published a new book and she mentioned this one, or the reviewer mentioned this book in the review. This book is set in the late 60s and 70s, and it is originally published in 1988. This tells the story of an adolescent girl growing up in rural Rhodesia, or Zimbabwe. The author is Zimbabwe native and who earned a medical degree and lived in Germany. That's really all I can remember about this book, but something inspired me to pick it up, or to order it from Amazon. I wish I could remember the exact details. In 2020, I purchased On Ugliness by Umberto Eco, translated from the Italian. Now, everyone should be familiar with the author Umberto Eco. His most famous novel is The Name of the Rose, and I have read The Name of the Rose a number of times and really enjoyed it. But this is a book of art criticism, talking about art that deals with ugliness. Let me read a little bit from the back. Selecting stark visual images of gore, deformity, moral turpitude, and malice, and quotations from sources ranging from Plato to radical feminists, Eco unfurls a taxonomy of ugliness. As gross-out contests go, it's both absorbing and highbrow. Now, there's a lot of art in this book, as you can see. And there's a lot of text describing the art. But it is not all classical art in this book. I have perused it a bit, and there are cartoons and popular art in this book. Something made me want to read about ugliness. This is actually a follow-up to his book on beauty, about beauty in art. But for some reason, I'm more attracted to ugliness. I really should read this. There is an art event coming up in September, or I hope it's coming up in September, called Framed in September. Maybe this should be my nonfiction book that I read in 2025. Also in 2020, I purchased Above Us, the Milky Way by Fowzia Karimi. Again, I'm probably butchering her last name. This book does not come with a dust jacket. I don't remember what inspired me to purchase this book. It is a complete blank, but I will read from the description. Above Us, the Milky Way is a story about war, immigration, and the remarkable human capacity to create beauty out of horror. As a young family attempts to reconstruct their lives in a new and peaceful country, they are daily drawn back to the first land through remembrance and longing, by news of the continued suffering and the loss of loved ones, and by the war dead who have immigrated and reside with them, haunting their days and illuminating the small joys and wonders offered them by a new land. The novel's structure is built around the alphabet. 26 pieces written in the first person that sketch a line of memory for the lives of the 5 daughters, mother and father. Ghost stories and fairy tales are woven with old family photographs and medieval-style watercolor illuminations to create an origin story of loss and remembrance. Now, if you look at the text here, you will see that there are some color photos and there are some colored lines. Oddly enough, this is a ragged right formatting to the text. Now, I don't like ragged right when I read it in a Kindle book, but who knows? The designer of this book deliberately chose ragged right. I can't even remember where this author came from. I'm thinking it's Afghanistan, maybe, not positive. And where did I learn about this book? Memory is a horrible thing when you can't pluck it out of your brain. But just reviewing this book reminded me, yeah, I really want to read this one. No Greater Courage, a novel of the Battle of Fredericksburg by Richard Croker. I bought this book in 2021. I know exactly why I bought this book, because I moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia in 2021, and I wanted to read some fiction set in my new hometown. I haven't gotten around to it yet. What's really fascinating is a majority of this story is set when the Union Army approaches the Rappahannock River, getting ready to cross into Fredericksburg. My house is on the banks of the Rappahannock River, and there is a very good chance that Union soldiers were trampling around my land that I own now way back in the 1860s. So this is a novel very close to home. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how well it was reviewed. I think it's mostly out of print, but it's set where I live. It's a history about the battle. We're in the town where I now live, as I've said before, and I really should get to it someday. And now for some books that I purchased in 2022. Mr. Either Or by Poochigian. Mr. Either Or is an ingenious debut, a verse novel melding American mythology, noir thriller, a classical epic into gritty rhymes, foreboding overtones, and groovy jams surrounding the listener in a surreal atmosphere. Imagine Byron's Don Juan on a high-stakes romp through a Chandler novel. Think Hamlet in Manhattan with a license to kill. I don't remember what drew me to this book. I think it may have been another booktube channel. I have not read many novels in verse, and this one has some odd formatting to some of its verse, but then again, some of its verse, as you can see, is more traditionally formatted. It's also a little bit of a Lovecraftian tale, if I'm not mistaken. So, mystery, horror, and verse. It's gotta be weird, and weird can be wonderful. Why have I not read this yet? Okay, I'm technically holding up 2 books, but I'm counting them as one. The first book is I Is Another by John Fosse, translated from the Norwegian by Damion Searls. This is volumes 3 to 5 in his Septology. I also have a new name. This is volumes 6 and 7 in his Septology. And why did I buy these books? Well, I have a very clear memory why I did for these two. That is because I read the other name, which is volumes 1 and 2 in the Septology. And this is a fascinating story of a man living on his own as a recluse somewhere in Norway. It is a very curiously written story. John Fosse won the Nobel Prize a little bit after I purchased and read these books. And I need to get back to him. This Septology is a favorite of Brian at Bookish, and I liked the other name well enough to purchase these two books, but I'm going to have to reread this book because I read it in 2022 before I can go back and read these because I don't remember enough. I've got the basic outlines of the story in my mind, and it's something I really want to get to again. The Kushnameh, the Persian epic of Kush the Tusked by Iranshah, originally published in 1108 to 1111. So a very old Persian epic. And I must have read about this somewhere on the internet, and I'm fascinated by old epics, like the Odyssey, the Iliad, the Aeneid, things like that. But this one is from Persia, an area of the world I'm really not very familiar with. So let me read you a little bit of the description from the back cover. The Kushnameh follows the entangled lives of Kush the Tusked, a monstrous anti-hero with tusks and ears like an elephant, descended from the evil emperor Zaharak and Abdontin, the exiled grandson of the last true Persian emperor. Abandoned at birth in the forests of China and raised by a Batin, Kush grows into a powerful and devious warrior. Kush and his foes scheme and wage war across a global stage reaching from Spain and Africa to China and Korea. Between epic battles and magnificent feats are disturbing portrayals of abuse and oppression and philosophical speculation about the nature and nurture and the origins of civilization. The Kushnameh is a treasure trove of Islamic and pre-Islamic Persian cultural history and a striking contemporary document of the global Middle Age. I really want to read this now. There's a reason I bought these books at the time, but they've been sitting on my shelf for so long. Why does this always happen to me? Spanish Stories, edited by Angel Flores. This is a dual language anthology of short stories, mostly in the public domain. If you open up the text, you will notice on the left-hand side of the page, you have the Spanish original. On the right-hand side of the page, you have an English translation. In 2022, I was still trying to teach myself to read Spanish, so I picked up this book saying it'd be really a great idea to have this text side by side to help me with my learning of Spanish. My learning of Spanish has sort of fallen on the wayside, so I'd have to study a lot to get to the point where I could read this in the original Spanish, even with an English translation on the other side. This book may be sitting on my shelf for some time. Now on to some books that I purchased in 2023. The Rest is Slander, 5 Stories by Thomas Bernhard, translated from the German by Douglas Robinson. When I was a young man in my middle 20s, I was absolutely fascinated with Thomas Bernhard. He is an Austrian author. He was really rather a misanthrope to the extreme. He hated everyone. But I loved his novels because they are written in this very dense one-paragraph style. And then he went on and ranted about subject after subject, rant after rant after rant. And I loved his rants. And then I noticed that this new book had been published of some of his short stories that had been previously uncollected and previously untranslated. So of course, I still had to buy them because I have all his novels that are available in English in hardcover on my shelf. So this was a must-buy. It should be a read. I should revisit Thomas Bernhard again. I did try to read some of his novels in 2022 or 2023. I did not like them as much as a man in my 50s as I did in my 20s. But why? What has happened to my fascination with this misanthrope in my 20s and now into my 50s, saying, not so great. Will I like this again? Or would I like this if I tried to read it? This is a good candidate for Shorty September. All 5 stories in this collection come up to 191 pages. Nettie. Do you remember Nettie? She was a booktuber back in 2023. She lived in Britain. She was a friend of mine and a friend of Alan, and she convinced us that she wanted to buddy read Heinz Kidnap by Joseph McElroy in 2024. So both Alan and I went out and bought this book. Now, Joseph McElroy is a rather famous American postmodern novelist. This book was originally published in 1969. This novel is about a long ago kidnapping case, all but abandoned, and how it's resurfacing into memory, into the neighborhoods of New York and Brooklyn Heights, into a larger, uncertain, and disturbed America of the 1960s. This, again, as I said, is a postmodern novel. Nettie convinced Alan and me to purchase it, but she dropped out of BookTube for reasons of her own, and Alan and I never got around to reading this book. It is tentatively scheduled for a buddy read sometime in 2026. I do hope we get around to it. Okay, those are my 10 untouchables. Books that I purchased beginning in 2018 all the way up through 2023. Who knows if I'll ever really get to read them. Some of them, as I said, are scheduled to be read, but who knows what the future really holds. I'm going to tag a few people who may have a few books of their own on their shelves that are unread. I am, of course, tagging Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, Hannah at Hannah's Books, Debs at Raynard Read Stuff, Aaron at Aaron Facer, Greg at Ghost Readers in the Sky, and Michael at Michael Romeo Talks Books. You are not obligated, of course, to do this tag. Only do it if you're interested. And if you're just watching this and you have 10 books on your shelves that have been there for more than a year and you want to do this tag, go for it. Thank you for watching and keep on reading those unread books on your shelf.